To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejados de las
This here's
puertas.
a wild ride in the woods.
So today on Miles from Main Street, I am bringing you the rest of the interview with Tom Thordarson. If you recall, the first time I talked to him, I had some recording issues and I missed some of the stuff that he had talked about. I have gotten that back together with him and we recorded again. We talked about his work he did with Beastly Kingdom, one of the rides he was trying to create there. We talk about his work with Universal Studios. He did some work over there with some mythological creatures as well. And he also tells us a great story about working in the lagoons over at Disneyland when the subs came up as a refurb and they were changing it over to what eventually became the Nemo subs. It's a great story and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. But before we get into it, let's remember we need to share and subscribe. Smash that subscribe button and share it out to a friend, please. The help has been tremendous and we'd love to see it and keep it going. And if you'd like to add in, come on out on Facebook and meet us out there. Also, this is the last chance you have to come out and meet us for the Haunted Mansion movie coming out this Friday, the 28th. We are meeting at Bay Park Cinema, and we're going to get together after the movie as well. We're watching the 6 o'clock showing. We'd love to have anyone and everyone come on out and join us for that. We will be gathering at the Brick House in De Pere after the movie so we can talk about the movie and just get to know each other a little bit. I'm looking forward to it. Mikailo's coming up. We're all going to have a really great time. I look forward to meeting you all. So finally, I'm so excited to present the rest of the interview with Tom Thordarson. So Tom, the last time we recorded, it was kind of a little bit of a snafu on my part, and I've kind of explained that to the listeners. And so I really appreciate you being able to come back and filling in some holes for us and doing this once again. Before we get going too far, you seem to have awakened something in me after we talked the last time, and I forgot to put on my Tiki pendant tonight, but I picked up your Tangaroa Tiki pendant from Tiki Land, and my daughter is completely embarrassed whenever I wear it, but
yeah, well, for obvious reasons, but
no, I've been digging into Tiki a little bit more. My wife and I, for the last year, have been wanting to, and have started redecorating our backyard with a Tiki design and decor and stuff like that. So I've started digging into those crafted cocktails you had mentioned, and I've been drooling over all of the mugs you've been putting out. The I was trying to remember the name of the birds mug that just came out last week.
The Glee Club?
The Glee Club, yes. Oh my goodness. I saw it and it just went, wow, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a cool mug. It really came out pretty cool. We've been pushing on detail and more color and trying to, it's just ceramic is so much harder to do that. I mean, you can do anything if it were a toy or a model or something like that, that's no problem. But when you're dealing with a hard material like ceramic and glazes that change colors when they fire, it's just it's a whole nother different ball game.
So I know you've been doing like the sculpting with it, like as you're saying, you do the painting as well then too?
No, not very often. I'm usually just like that was in my career. I'm off to another project, conceptualizing, drawing it and sculpting it. And then there are times when I'll do a prototype. I'll do it. I'm happy to jump in there and do a sample glaze, what I think would be cool, and do prototype firing of it. But for the most part, the glazing, goes to, we have a factory overseas that we've worked very closely with to try to get them to, really keep the quality up and raise the quality from bar. And so that's usually who's doing the glazing, because, we're talking like sometimes 800 mugs, so sometimes 1,000. So yeah, I'd go clinically insane sculpting that many, doing all of that and glazing at the same time.
Well, last time you said that I was going to be excited over what was to come, and I'm already like, look, it's only been a few weeks and a few different mugs, and I haven't been able to reach down and spend the money on the mug yet, but it's going to happen here eventually. I'm going to find one that I can't let go. So,
I understand.
Yeah. So last time we were talking, we spent a lot of time talking about your work in the Disney stores, with Madame Leota, and we talked about your work with Journey to the Center of the Earth. But some of the stuff that we did talk about that didn't make it to the last episode was some work you did on the submarine ride in Disneyland. There was a refurb going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It in a nutshell, it was an assignment that Tony Baxter had invited me, myself, Brian Jowers, who's a concept designer, did a lot of the concepting for Indiana Jones as well. So it was just a handful, and Marshall Monroe from research and development. And he said, there's a new movie coming out in production at the Disney Studios called Atlantis, a new animated feature. We don't know how it's going to do, or how it's, turns out the movie wasn't, I guess, that well liked, but we didn't know back then. It looks pretty fantastic and steampunkish and whatever to us. And he said, at that time, the powers to be, including Michael Eisner, had said, we got to do something about this submarine ride that's been here for the last God knows how long. It's leaking, and we just can't. This is in Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the concrete and everything at the bottom is just the leaking and the amount of water to refill the thing, and it's just becoming a financial money pit. So they had made the decision that if they were going to renovate it, they weren't just going to do the same thing. They were either going to completely wipe it out and do something totally different in that area, or if they were going to go through the cost of renovating all the plumbing structure and all that kind of stuff, that they wanted to do a different theme than the old traditional ride. So that's how Atlantis, the animated feature, got tied in. It was when they, it was an IP that they at that time believed in, and I spent some time over at the studio looking at the production art and talking to some of the crew who were putting that movie together, and I got inspired. And so what we did, though, is we didn't want it to be like the movie exactly, Atlantis. We wanted to get at that time, Disney had a little spark where they were seeing what Universal was doing, and Universal's known for blowing everything up and all that kind of stuff. And
sure,
and Disney, of course, is known for being a little bit more genteel. But so at that time, I got the impression, and our team had the impression, they wanted us to come up with an experience in those submarines, if we kept the submarines, that would really blow people's minds, and that that could be something considered competitive with the with a Universal Studios attraction, which is much more jarring and and such. So we put together a show. I don't remember that we ever wrote it we wrote any major treatment. I don't remember. We didn't have a writer on the team. We just, Marshall and I and a bunch of us sat down and we go, okay, what are the key things we like from the movie that we saw at the Disney Studios? Well, there's a giant Leviathan, which is really cool. The sub looked really cool. The design of the sub, so we could clad the new sub to look like this sub in the ride, and it would be a really wicked looking sub, and a few other things. But we thought, let's put people through an experience where it really gets kind of traumatic. It gets you actually that it can be a little bit frightening in a good way, but it can be something that's going to shake some bones a little bit here. So we got it. The whole sub ride closed down, and I told you about that, when I watched the last sail, the skippers leaving the subs for the last day. I think I cried my eyes out like a old lady, giving away a grandchild. It was just I had so many memories from that ride. And when it was all said and done, we were able to take one of the subs and dock it and do some testing and mock up a show in there. And this show we came up with essentially was we wanted people to feel like they were getting a tour of some sort, but that we actually get attacked by a giant Leviathan. And we wanted to do it in a way that wasn't a big rubber octopus outside of the thing. We wanted to use a new technology they were playing around with, which is underwater rear projection. So they could project on screens underwater. And if you did that in the right ways, when the sub was passing these projection screens, we were thinking we had these effects where you had a huge all of a sudden, when you're on this thing, there's this big tentacle that goes sweeping by the outside of the little windows in the submarine, and with a rumble and a sound of something rubbing against the outside metal hull of the submarine. And we had the whole thing laced with woofers and different sound equipment that really gave it some tremendous range and three-dimensional sound.
Mm-hmm.
And as it got worse and the Leviathan was clenching on the ship, we tried to make it sound like the ship was being crushed, by the power of the Leviathan. And they even rigged up solenoids on a couple of the windows. Marshall did, so that it looked like the rivets were starting to pop out of the window portals. And then of course the sound was just bone rumbling as the Leviathan was making these strange sounds, and you saw its big eye coming along and looking in sub, all done with rear projection. And so we put this thing together, and for the amount of time we had and the technology we had at the time and everything, I mean, Marshall really did a great job. And we had the special lighting all outside there, and then underwater projectors. And that's when because I'm a certified scuba diver, and so I got a chance to go out there and play around with some of the lighting and adjustment and stuff, and then also made my obligatory tour, just in my, in my wetsuit and my tank. And I kind of did a short little swim around the lagoon at night. It was dark,
Oh,
but yeah, we brought
come
back
on.
all the memories. It was
Yeah,
like,
that's
uh,
awesome.
yeah. And but anyway, so then that we've had to present that show that we came up with to Paul Pressler and Michael Eisner and a couple other executives, and for consideration. And uh, after they got done with the whole thing, it worked great. It just worked great. And we were just like, we're thinking they're going to come out of that submarine just going, oh my God, you guys just came up with the coolest thing ever. And this is going to kick Universal's ass and everything. But they came out of there, just ruffled and scared. And they said, you know what? That was one hell of an experience, but there is no way. No, I mean, people are already, we get like, I can't remember how many reports of people getting claustrophobia going into those submarines over the decades anyway. And all you're doing is going around looking at fish on strings,
Mm-hmm.
So to do what we were talking about, where the lights would go out and flitter and flash and all this stuff was happening, they said we just can't do it. It's just not. We're gonna have to hose down the inside of the sub after every ride. so that got put on the shelf, and I moved on to other projects. And next thing I knew, there was some other team. They were kind of waiting for a solution, and so somebody made the decision that why don't they take Finding Nemo and make that the theme and use the underwater projection, but make it a much softer, more whimsical experience. So
More Disney-like.
yeah. But I would have. I mean, the other one was just fantastic, but it would have. Yeah, it could have seriously traumatized some people, I think. But no worse than what Universal was doing at the time and doing the earthquake attraction and all that other stuff that they were blowing up, and Catastrophe Canyon, and I didn't
Yeah.
see any.
Well, and this was kind of the same time as Extraterrestrial was going on at Disney World.
Yeah,
And I remember doing that and being terrified, and
yeah,
going, how is this here? Like this, it just seemed out of character,
yeah.
but I loved it. I thought it was terrific, and I wanted to keep going back and doing it. So, um, and from what I understand, it sounds like that was one of Eisner's ideas as well, because they had just gotten some rights with Alien, or they were working on rights with Alien, and that's why they had done that. But
Yeah.
yeah, its ultimate
No.
demise was because of it being too scary. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, that's what I heard. But
yeah,
and my studio office was right next door to um, Rick Rothschild's, who was the producer on that, and so he was always in there testing out sound mixes of monster noises and all this kind of stuff. And I remember for months, I had that theater rumbling through my walls of my office to listen to every day. But but again, that was the time when there's a lot of there still is, of course, but then it was like the first time ever Universal was really ramping themselves up from just being a studio tour, and Disney was taking the challenge back again and wanting to compete. It was very competitive, and it's a great time for me because there weren't very many people that did what I do, and it was before schools started teaching design for theme parks and everything like that. Matter of fact, I was a teacher at that time for 5 years at Art Center after work, I'd go and I taught that class. But so it was an exciting time.
Yeah, and I only bring up the alien extraterrestrial because, my thought was that if something like that is going on and you're trying to do this Leviathan thing, like maybe they'd go for it, but maybe you just scared the heck
Yeah.
out of them way too much that, that they just said no.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact timing, which, how far along that had come. I can't remember. I think that there probably was always a little concern. But I don't have any actual eyewitness stories about that team or being on that team to know what went on. I just knew little fun things like that the electrical yard that was right down the street from Imagineering. There was I don't know what they call it, a power generation yard there with those big, massive towers that have those big Frankenstein-like things coming off of them, and everything.
Oh, sure.
An older power station, and they went over there and took pictures to get a lot of the inspiration for a lot of the set work in there, and the strange looking power generators and weird things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny to hear like how that was able to get going, but I mean,
yeah, I don't get it.
I would have loved to have seen that lagoon become a scare fest, but
yeah, me too. But that was the beginning too of the time when people were starting to push back in unusual ways, and I remember they were letting letters be that were coming in from the public that were offended or thought something was inappropriate, and some of them we got to see, or they were shared in memos, and so it was back when they were talking about things like the pirates, and having to remove different things because they were offensive to some people. The pirates chasing the women in circles, and the girl in the barrel with the negligee or the whatever corset, and all those things were starting to be requested to be changed. The public put a lot of pressure on it, and Disney was starting to do it. They were listening. They weren't pushing back, and that was beginning. I think the first times I had ever seen that happen. But you see where it is now. It's gone only amplified tremendously since then on those sorts of things, and
right.
How we have to be careful about offending and doing different things. So it's a different world.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of different worlds, you went over to Animal Kingdom and started working on Beastly Kingdom, you had said. So you did some concept work over there.
I didn't really go over there. All it was I part of the job of a concept designer is sometimes you get locked onto one project for a year or two, and then sometimes some concept designers want to see the whole thing through to opening day, so their role changes to an art director or whatever, and then a field art director, and etc. I've always tried to stay up in the front and cause the trouble and then get away from it as fast as I can. And also my attention span. I've found that it's just me personally. I lose my interest after I've been through a ride a million times in my mind, and I'm already starting to see models being made. We're making models and everything, and you're looking at it in the model form and everything. For some reason, I always my interest would wane, and so they knew this, and so now and then they'd pop me onto something going on somewhere else. And as I said, in this case, um, I was not officially on the team with Joe at all on Animal Kingdom. He just grabbed me because I was available and knew I had just designed this creature for Journey to the Center of the Earth and all the creatures inside and everything, and he liked what I was doing. He said, "Would you mind taking a crack at this idea I've got? About these mythical animal rides. This mythical animal ride that's activated by a laser on the front of your ride vehicle." And so I just kind of went crazy with it, and that was my only involvement. And I just generated a lot of inspirational sketches and moments, and designed, some of the elements of the ride vehicle cladding and all that kind of stuff. And that's the most I was involved with that. And many times those things are just options. Of course, as we talked about last time, few things make it through all the filters to actually become a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember where that went, because that, my job was done, and everyone liked what I did, but whether or not it was going to be the appropriate answer for whatever track system they ended up going with, or what, I don't know. So that, my stuff would end up in the archive drawers after the presentations, and never heard anything more, unless I one day saw a team put together, building it. So, but yeah, so that's what that was all about. I don't know how specific, you want me to get. It's hard to describe. If this were something where I could show things, I've still got old sketches around of some of it, but it was gonna be fun, I think.
Well, I'll throw out there, since you mentioned that, Topper's been in our community group putting some of the old pictures and drawings that he has out in the group with a little story. So I'll extend an invitation to you if you have any desire to come out and share that with us. That would be great. We're loving seeing that. So
I'll dig through some drawers and see what I can find. My favorite part was there was a shield supposedly on the front of your vehicle, and as you went through these caverns and things, and the shield had a Medusa head pounded in metal on it with a eye that shot a laser and beam. And so the idea was, and I don't remember how we were controlling the thing, or whether you could pitch the shield from the inside or whatever it was, but if you approached something, a terrible creature, and were able to hit it in the right spot, the special effects would cause it to look like it turned to stone. So what you were trying to do is disarm these different creatures. And that was, there was no other real story written than that. We were just kind of playing around with what might be interesting,
Sure.
So,
well, that sounds like a fun little attraction that, I like the interactive, kind of like the Buzz Lightyear thing where you're shooting at something, and that sounds like something along those lines. I think that would have been a great addition to Animal Kingdom.
And also the reason that some of those things, I think, in my opinion, looking back on it, there was right technologies and stuff being developed at WDI for various of their parks. And so sometimes if they went through all the trouble of developing a ride system that was working at another place, they'd say, we've done all the groundwork and all the planning and we got the plans for the system, we've got parts, blah 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 blah. Why don't we put one of these ride systems in another park and retheme it a different way. But as a matter of fact, I think if I recall right, it was Michael Eisner made that real clear at one meeting, that he felt that we should responsibly, kind of an Imagineering, kind of take a look at that fact that we have. He said something to the effect of, and I'm not quoting him directly, but we have so many things in the drawers of built functioning attractions, and if we're working overseas in China, if we're doing this and that, why don't we repurpose some of this work that we've done with people spending years engineering it and developing it and everything, and just adapt it and find a reuse, a retheming, a new story around it, and be a little more responsible with the cost and everything that it takes to have that many people figuring something out from scratch.
I could see that. Yeah. Being an accountant, we're always thinking that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There, I had a note here about a dinosaur excavation ride. I'm not recalling.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. I'm pretty sure that was part of that same proposed development, but I was also working on early concepts for some other attractions in China. This was way before. This wasn't Shanghai. This was before that. This was the other one they were exploring, and there was a Dino Dig ride, which wanted to be a runaway sort of mine car experience, built around the story that we were going through the excavation of dinosaurs. But it's funny thing is now I can't remember which park it was in, whether it was in somewhere around Animal Kingdom, or whether this was the one I was working on with the other team.
I think we had. I think you had brought it up as part of the Beastly Kingdom piece.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure it was. I just can't promise because again, it was a while ago, and I was jumping from one thing to another, and sometimes I can't remember, keep it straight where something was going to go.
Well, and we were talking earlier that that you were bouncing back and forth from Universal and Disney, and you did some of the work over at Universal at Islands of Adventure, and you said you were just kind of having trouble at this point because I mean we're all getting old at this point, right? The 90s seem like yesterday to me at times, and yet it's
me too.
30 years ago. So it's like I can see all of that kind of melding together at this point. So, but I know you had said you had done some work at Universal Islands of Adventure, and that maybe some of the Beastly Kingdom stuff had gone that direction as well.
Let's see. I wasn't going back and forth. Really, once I left Universal, I was no longer involved in anything to do with Universal, and I was 100% with Disney. So I was bouncing around in previous years because I was more freelance, so I was available to get involved with projects, all of them. But again, I didn't. The whole focus that they had me on, although I did, I worked on a lot of the ride technologies were coming first. Like they would say, okay, we want to do a maglev aircraft carrier launch roller coaster. And it's going to be. We're thinking of calling it the Incredible Hulk coaster. And could you come up with some sketches on how, what it might look like? I mean, and so I would do these drawings, that, and especially in the queue line and everything. That's the same thing with Dueling Dragons, but all of that, I would say, was mythological, wasn't necessarily animals. It was myth, except for the dragons and things, but it was. I didn't work too much. I wasn't a key designer on the team. I wasn't a core designer assigned to Islands of Adventure. I just got pulled in and on different miscellaneous parts of it. They would sometimes they wouldn't know what to do with a certain thing, and they'd want me to take a crack at it. And so, really, my attraction right before I left from Universal was I was doing the design work for the Waterworld live action stunt show, which then that was my primary responsibility, and which is still running today. But believe it or not, even though the movie didn't exactly do great, but so again, I was all over the place, but yeah, I in retrospect, I never put a parallel really together between those two, and I don't know why. I should look back again and see what the menu was again on both those areas and see what things might be parallel. But I know from the inside their objectives were very different. I don't think at least I wasn't aware of that anyone was trying to do the same thing, and with a slight tweak that made it their own in those two lands. And I don't remember, because I was off and done with anything to do with Animal Kingdom other than that little glimpse. I don't know if they ever did much of the Beast Kingdom stuff there. I don't remember that much going on.
I was going to ask if you knew if anything ended up getting started.
Yeah,
I
think when I asked about it in later years, I want to say someone told me that it just was sort of it wasn't decided to develop it. And there was other things happening then that were more, and technologies and different goals that Joe Rohde had. I think that just made that kind of never quite take flight. But I was used to that because that happened all the time in that industry. Like I said,
right.
The ideas came and went like crazy, and you never knew.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that because, to this day, you can cross that bridge heading over to what's now Pandora, and there's actually like a dragon head that was put in along the river there. And it's like one of the last remnants of Beastly Kingdom, I guess. So
yeah,
I didn't know if you knew if any more shovels had been put in the dirt than that, but
yeah. Unfortunately, I wish I had been on that more in a more detailed way that I could share more about it. But I just, like I said, I as soon as I never was allowed to put, or not so much allowed, but I never was able to sink my roots too deeply into anything for a very long period of time, and I was off somewhere else. So and that was again, that was okay for me. That's how I enjoyed. That's what I enjoyed the most. The white piece of paper with nothing on it, and that's, for some people, it scared them to death. But that what scared me to death was having to
Yeah.
already been through in my brain and a million times,
Well,
So
I
everybody's
mean,
different.
yeah, exactly. Like, because you had said that last time that you made the choice not to go to Tokyo and put Journey into the ground, or to build it.
Right.
And like someone like me, like getting the opportunity to go over there and do something like that, I would probably jump on it. But
Yeah.
um, it's interesting that you definitely knew what was right for you and where you should be, and continue that direction. So
Yeah. And I had two little kids, that are 5 and under, and I just didn't want to uproot. And I think that was frowned upon. I mean, I think that um, I don't think that was the answer that they wanted to hear from me. But I kept going back to that which was my fantasy of what I wanted uh, to kind of hope that my job was all the things I had seen and was so enchanted by, as to what it was like in the earlier years when Walt was there. So, like I told you last time, I'd go and I'd walk the park, and I'd do these things. I figured it was part of my job. I didn't have to tell anybody that I'm going down to Disneyland for a few hours. I just want to observe people, and I want to time a ride, and I want to see.
mhm.
And because I learned from talking to people who knew Walt and how he would do that all the time. And and so, I kind of tried to make it my own, a job that fit me, and that doesn't always work, and when in a company, in a corporation that's changing, like Disney is, and it's still changing, and we can see it today.
Yeah.
There isn't one man with a driving vision and a few of his best creative um, comrades around him that are conjuring up magic. It's not that simple anymore. It's gotten so multi complicated. There's even positions that I can't even imagine what they are anymore. Between each manager, there's more managers, and there's a creative of creative, and then there's a creative portfolio holding person for it. It's just it baffles my mind. It wasn't, even when I was there, it wasn't that complicated. And I miss that. Because I think we got a lot of work done with that simplicity.
Sure. Not to get too much on a tangent, but um, the way I kind of look at the history of Disney, like Eisner was kind of that visionary. He had ideas that he wanted to see done.
Yeah.
I don't see that from the recent CEOs since then, though. Like they don't,
Mm-hmm.
like, I know Iger has pushed like creativity, but you don't see the drive that Walt or Michael Eisner had to create certain things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like Eisner had that kid like mentality that Walt had, but you don't see that with like Bob Iger. So
Yeah. I don't know. It's a different vibe. I guess I think it's what you're picking up on too. And it's where it's a sort of mentality that I don't relate to, so
yeah.
or it doesn't interest me. That, I want to play, and I want to play hard, and I want to be appreciated for the ability to have the intellect of an adult, but the mind of a child.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It
And
does, absolutely.
that's just who I am, and I've had to accept that. And it's worked for me many times, most of the time, and sometimes it hasn't. Sometimes, they're like, enough, Tom. You can leave the meeting now.
I do like, and I said this the last time we talked too, like it just warms my heart when I hear someone like you talk about wanting to know your job just like Walt knew his job.
Uh,
And I know that um someone listening to the show and hearing that, I'm sure they're feeling the same thing because um we want to see Walt back. We want to see some of his ideals,
yeah.
continued if not lived, and so to hear like you were like, last time we talked about how you would get up and you would act out some of these stories that you had and
Mhm.
for everyone,
Yeah.
and that harkened back to Walt, um and the fact that you would go down to the park and watch, like everyone doing their thing
Mhm.
just like he did. Like I love hearing that, and I'm glad that that was still going on. And I hope it
Yeah.
still is today.
I do too. I can't say I'm not there on a daily basis anymore, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's how it all started, so
Yeah.
can't be that bad. The system. um,
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I just think there's a lot more people with accountability that there's a lot more people with their butts on the line now, and so that happens with anything. But the best analogy is, I remember I've done my best drawings on the back of a paper bag or something because I knew there was nothing. I wasn't nervous about it. If I didn't like it, I'd crumple up the bag and throw it aside. But then, if I went out and I bought a expensive piece of Canson paper, that cost me $3 a piece, and did my drawings, I would be so nervous about being free to think and draw on that damn paper that it kind of it ruined it, the magic.
yeah.
And so I would say that you could imagine that some of these guys whose jobs depend on their numbers and on their you know approvals and their different things like that um, creativity, they get scared, I would think, to be able to let themselves go and really fly out to the perimeter and do something uh, truly risk taking and fantastic. And that's, I think, I can see how that could happen.
Yeah, I completely agree on that one. Um, so, speaking of drawing, I did want to ask, you have artwork, or at least you did. I hope you still do have some artwork at the Polynesian. Um, and I wanted to ask like what we might be able to find there that I'm planning on staying there in March, so I want to dig it
I
out,
think they've last I heard, well, my artwork was in all the rooms and in the lobby when you entered it, and behind all the people checking you in. There was a giant 4-part uh, mural, but that was 10-15 years ago. So
Okay.
since then, I think they've remodeled it 3 times, or at least twice, and they've pushed it now much more towards the the recent animated stuff, features that push more towards Hawaii and Polynesia and all that kind of stuff. So I heard that all that was now taken down, the stuff that I had done, but that you could find some of the paintings occasionally in different parts of the hotel. Like you'd be going down, I don't know, a hallway into the main something or other, and friends of mine would say, "Oh, I saw your painting down by the so and so banquet room. It's on the wall on the west wall now. That one painting." And then I saw they auctioned off all the paintings, the prints that were in the rooms. I had about 2 or 3 different pieces, and that were reproduced 1,000 times.
Right.
And they had, when they redid the thing, they turned it over to an auction company. And so I'd see those pop up here and there on all these weird places, everything from eBay to, some auction house, liquidation company that they would have silent auctions on those kinds of things. So if you see any of my work, it's going to, I'm not sure. It's going to be by chance
Okay.
that it's in hanging, and those would be the originals that they'd have hanging up probably.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay. Well, now I'm gonna have to
um,
walk all the halls and see if I can find it.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask, Polynesian art, but is there anything else in the parks nowadays that's still there that you're proud of that we can go and say, hey, I heard a podcast with that guy, and
Uh, you know, all of that is in Tokyo. I mean, I was so involved in all of that in Tokyo.
okay,
Or if you see the Water World stunt show, which is not Disney. Um, Disneyland, I just didn't happen to be assigned to a lot of things at Disneyland because at the time, the main times where I were there, um, a lot of the stuff was just small renovational stuff that was going on by the local Imagineer crew that's there on the premises. Like, they'd be responsible for doing things like making minor changes in the attractions based on some of the things I talked about earlier. And then nothing too Indy was going on, but I wasn't part of Indy. And then they changed the treehouse. And the subs, of course, is the only other thing, but doesn't look like that. So, I never really got a chance to get my teeth into Anaheim. I really wish I had, because it was the place I first ever got my taste of Disney, and
mm-hmm.
it would have been a joy, to have done that. But they had enough people already working on all that stuff. And so I was getting sent off to all these other bizarre projects they had going on, different other countries.
Well, that's part of the game, I guess. Like you put something out there, it gets to live for a while, and hopefully it stays for longer. And
Yeah.
but I will, one of my hopes is to get out to Tokyo. That's the next, that one in
Yeah, you'll
Paris.
love it. Yeah.
My wife has told me that I have to take her to Italy before her 50th. So we're gonna
Yeah.
plan a side trip for Paris, but then Tokyo is next on the list. So
Yeah, and Tokyo, although I've always loved Japanese stuff. I have no idea why, but every birthday when I was a kid, so what do you want to do where do you want to do for your birthday? I want to go to a Japanese restaurant, and I want to go to SeaWorld or Disneyland. And a Japanese restaurant was always thrown in there. And they're like, why do you want to go to a Japanese restaurant? It's like, they were just so exotic, they were just so interesting. They had shrimp tempura and stuff like that. So when I got assigned to this project in Japan, I had already worked with the Mitsubishi Corporation and all those other jobs I told you I had. So I already had kind of a love for Japan, and but I have to say that for most people, and a lot of the other people that traveled with me that had not been there much and would rather have gone to Europe and stuff,
mm-hmm.
It was very culturally difficult for them. The food, everything is so different. I mean, you can't, everything that looks like it's going to be sweet, you take a bite of it and it's salty and tastes like fish, and everything that is the opposite, it turns out to be a candy. You think you're about to take a bite out of beef jerky, and it ends up being tasting like a sweet taffy or something. I'm kind of exaggerating, but So you have to be ready for a lot of surprises. It's definitely the other side of the world, you know. But I
Yeah.
just really enjoyed that. I always got a kick out of it.
I didn't realize that about the food. Like, I get into the sushi and um the
Yeah,
hibachi type places around here, but I've never put together that their food looks differently from how it
yeah,
tastes. So
yeah,
I'm all
yeah,
about that. I would love to do that. So
yeah, yeah. No, I loved it.
well, what we did talked about Tiki Land a little bit at the beginning, and you mentioned a lot of what you're doing on the last
Hmm.
show, but is there anything you want to add to that? Like,
I've got an article I think you'd really enjoy reading that's coming out that I wrote in what right now probably I'd say the fundamental magazine for tiki and mid-century lovers. It's called Exotica Moderne, and it's a beautifully done magazine. And so I did the first cover 5 years ago, and then this year they asked me to illustrate the cover and write an article. So and the article is it's rather than just talking about myself, things I've done or accomplished. I really wanted to touch people with a personal story that happened to me. As far as my gateway to tiki and to the escapism lifestyle, and I was very very young. I was only about 5 years old, and all I'll say is it took place at my aunt Elaine's house in Chicago, and she created what she thought was a tiki bar in the basement of their Chicago house, and I'll tell you, it was like the most fun experience for all of our family when we'd go visit her. And it was so eclectic, but she did the best she could to try to make it look like things she had seen, and she didn't have the best or the most expensive or most authentic uh, decor representing tiki, but it had enough things in it that just were added an element of magic. And it was the people, the relatives and everything, and everyone gathered down there. And once you went down that basement, into that basement, it literally was like going down Alice's the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland, because you'd go down there and they'd be laughing and having fun, and there was colored lights and some tiki stuff here and there, and things she had made. She couldn't find a tiki lamp, so she turned her laundry basket upside down, wicker laundry basket, and worked it up with shells, and it's I did an illustration of that moment in time that I remember, a pretty detailed illustration. That's the cover, and then and then I kind of highlight on that in my article, and how really my message is that we have a lot of debates amongst these organizations, these clubs and these things, and these people that collect tiki and take it seriously, and it's sad to me because it's over the years I've seen a lot of friendships fall apart, and it's become like the North and South. Some people are, as they call them, purists, and only have things that would have existed in a proper tiki bar or whatever of the time, and then other people are like, "Hey, I'm here to have a good time. If I want to collect Disney tiki stuff and throw it in with stuff that came from, I don't know, a Trader Vic's restaurant or whatever, I'm going to do all that." And that's my version of a tiki bar. It's my escape. It's my little place. But this
mhm.
causes huge rough battles online, and vicious. And so my message, subtle message, is just that, this was the simplest, pitiful little attempt at having something that wasn't even called a tiki bar at the time. It later on was called a tiki bar. It was just, and what made it was the people who were in there. They weren't making any judgments. They were just, you felt the love and the camaraderie and the joy of all of us pretending like we were somewhere else, that we were down the rabbit hole. And I really want to leave that message with all of the people, and hoping that the community goes back to that again, because it's what brings the joy. We have enough of other things in this world that we have to deal with. Last thing we need is to have something like this start to become something we can't enjoy anymore. So, and I talk about a little bit about Tiki Land in there, and that I'm happy to be there and excited, and but that's about it. That's pretty much what's going down there, and I'm going to continue to tinker with more and more ideas, and see where it all goes. I have a book I want to write and illustrate, a couple of them. I don't know if I'll ever get to that in my lifetime, but I hope I do. But we'll see.
I imagine you have to put down a mug or two to be able to pick up an illustration, right?
Yeah, I know. I definitely do.
Well, if I can say anything to that, which I don't think I need to be inspiring a former Imagineer, but they always say in the podcasting world, just pick up the mic and start talking, and you've got your podcast. So, if the moment strikes, just go for
it. I think that's good advice.
Yeah. Well, Tom, again, it's been an honor. I really appreciate you taking time to talk with me, and it's been terrific. So
my pleasure.
So that was a great conversation I got to have with Tom. We got into quite a bit of different things there. Not only his career, but some thoughts on the direction of the company right now. And, it was great to talk to him. He's such a great guy to talk to. And I hope in the future we could have him back, and maybe there's more that we can ask him about. He says he's got lots of stories. If there's any questions you guys have or something you want to hear from him, let us know, and we'll get him back on the show and we'll talk about it. So, again, Facebook community group, as you heard, he is going to come out to our Facebook community group, post some stuff there that he's been working on, so we can see some of the stuff he was talking about. Topper is doing the same thing. Topper Helmers has been a great addition to our community, putting a lot of great information up there. He is doing it exclusively with us. So if you want to see this information, this is where you've got to go. So it'll be great to have you join us in the community group. All those links are in our show notes, and we are on Facebook and Instagram. And please come on out, join us out there. Let's talk more. But that's all we've got for you this week. As we like to say, some live close, but others don't. We'll see you next time on Miles from Main Street.